We're living deep in the age of AI. It's everywhere. Our phones, our cars, you name it. But have you ever really stopped to think about what's physically powering this whole revolution? It's not just elegant code and complex algorithms. No, it's a massive, mostly hidden world of power plants, intricate cooling systems, and globe-spanning supply chains. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the real, physical price of AI, and I think what we find is going to surprise.
Think about the last time you asked a chatbot a question or had an AI whip up an image for you. It feels instant, almost like magic, right? But what if I told you that simple, digital action kicked off a physical chain reaction that burns a whole lot of energy and resources? That's the core question we're digging into today. What is the real price of a single AI answer?
Okay, get ready for a number that's, well, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. 1 megawatt. That's how much power a single next-generation AI server rack is expected to consume. To put that in perspective for you, that's enough electricity to power nearly 1,000 homes, all from one single rack of servers. The scale we're talking about here is just staggering.
And it's not just a few of these power-hungry racks. The International Energy Agency is predicting that the total electricity used by data centers is going to triple by 2035. This isn't some slow, gradual increase. It's a seismic shift in global energy demand, and it's happening right now. It's putting this incredible pressure on power grids that, honestly, are already struggling to keep up.
So how are we going to break this massive topic down? First, we'll tackle AI's absolutely insatiable appetite for energy. Then, we'll dive into the incredible new technologies being invented just to keep these super-powered machines from melting. We'll also see a cool twist, how AI is actually helping other huge industries like shipping become more efficient. And finally, we'll zoom out, look at the big picture, and ask some tough questions about how we balance our digital ambitions with the physical limits of our world.
All right, first up, let's talk about the sheer raw power that AI consumes. And look, we're not just talking about adding a few extra servers in a warehouse. We're talking about a complete, fundamental shift in how we even think about data centers. They aren't just buildings full of computers anymore. They are becoming these massive AI factories designed and built for one purpose: to churn out the next generation of artificial intelligence.
And as you can see from this chart, this new energy demand is incredibly concentrated. The IEA expects over 85% of all this new data center growth to happen in just 3 places: the US, China, and Europe. This is putting a colossal strain on the power grids in those regions. It's forcing this race to modernize where, yeah, we're pushing for renewables, but the demand is so high that natural gas and even coal are still being fired up to fill the gap.
So all that power creates one enormous problem: heat. And I don't mean it gets a little warm. I mean, we're talking about enough heat to literally melt the hardware. That's why we're in the middle of a full-blown revolution in data center cooling. Forget giant fans, we are entering the era of liquid cooling, where specialized fluids are the only thing keeping these AI factories from a total meltdown.
This slide really lays it out. Think of it this way. Traditional air cooling is like trying to cool a race car engine by pointing a desk fan at it. It might do something, but it's not very effective. Liquid cooling, on the other hand, is like the car's actual radiator system, pumping coolant right through the engine block. It's just so much better at grabbing heat and pulling it away. In fact, it can be up to 3,000 times more efficient. For the kind of AI we're building, liquid cooling isn't just a nice upgrade, it's an absolute necessity.
And at the heart of these systems is a piece of hardware called a coolant distribution unit, or CDU. The easiest way to think about it is like the heart of the system. It pumps the cool fluid to the servers to absorb all that intense heat, and then it circulates the now hot fluid away to be cooled down again. It's a pretty straightforward idea, but it's the critical component that makes the whole thing work.
And the actual engineering solutions being deployed are just wild. We're seeing everything from direct-to-chip cooling, where tiny pipes feed coolant right onto the hottest parts of a processor, to full-on immersion cooling, where entire servers are literally dunked into a bath of non-conductive liquid. Companies are even redesigning power delivery itself to cut down on heat from the get-go. It's a whole new frontier of innovation.
And some of these ideas feel like they're straight out of science fiction. Get this. Microsoft actually built a data center, sealed it in a container, and sank it off the coast of Scotland. The results? They were incredible. The servers in that underwater pod had 8 times fewer failures than the same servers on land. This just goes to show we're completely rethinking the physical world of the internet, and the possibilities are pretty much endless.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on how AI is this massive energy hog. But what if I told you AI is also one of our best tools for saving energy? This is the great paradox of AI. And to see it in action, we're going to leave the data center behind and head out to the high seas to see how AI is quietly revolutionizing the global shipping industry.
The shipping industry, as you can imagine, is one of the biggest fuel consumers on Earth. But AI is starting to change that. By crunching massive amounts of data, everything from weather patterns to ocean currents, AI can plot the most fuel-efficient route for a giant container ship, saving incredible amounts of time and money. It's also being used to predict when a crucial engine part might fail, so it can be fixed before it breaks down in the middle of the ocean. It's a total game changer for the industry.
And as AI expert Terry Singh points out, it's not just about the long journey. AI is finding efficiencies in what he calls the last nautical mile. We're talking about optimizing every little detail, from precisely how containers are loaded to micro-adjustments in speed to save fuel. These might sound like tiny changes, but when you scale them across thousands of ships making millions of voyages, they add up to huge savings in both energy and emissions.
But of course, making this happen isn't as easy as just installing some new software. It's a really complex process. It starts with the basics, like just getting clean, reliable data. Then you have to use that data to actually spot the inefficiencies. And maybe most importantly, you have to train your crews and your staff to work with these new AI tools. It's a long road for sure, but the payoff is massive.
But it's not all smooth sailing out there. Far from it. In fact, our incredible digital ambitions are slamming right into some very tough, very real-world problems. So in this next section, we're going to talk about the global headwinds and bottlenecks that are threatening to put the brakes on this AI revolution.
Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. In May 2025, new environmental regulations kicked in for the Mediterranean Sea. And just look at what happened to fuel demand. The use of the standard fuel, VLSFO, dropped like a rock. At the same time, demand for the cleaner but much more expensive fuel, MGO, nearly doubled. This just shows how fast new rules can create a huge and costly shock to the physical supply chain.
And it's not just regulations. Let's be honest. The world is a pretty messy place right now. You've got attacks on ships in the Red Sea, you have ongoing trade tensions, and major conflicts that are all disrupting the flow of goods and energy across the planet. Every one of these things adds layers of complexity, risk, and cost, making it harder and more expensive to move stuff from point A to point B.
But maybe the biggest bottleneck of all isn't about ships or politics. It might just be about people. We are facing a critical shortage of engineers who actually have the right skill set to build and run this new infrastructure. We desperately need people who are fluent in both IT and the physics of power and cooling. And right now, there just aren't enough of them to go around. So where does all this leave us? Well, we're at a really interesting crossroads. On one hand, you have the almost limitless potential of the digital world. On the other, you have the very real, very firm limitations of the physical world. In this last section, we're going to talk about this great convergence and the challenge of balancing innovation with reality. You can literally see this convergence in the money being spent. The market for just managing data center infrastructure is set to nearly quadruple by 2035. And we're seeing some mind-blowing technologies emerge, like digital twins. These are basically perfect virtual replicas of a data center that let engineers test everything from power loads to cooling flows before a single piece of physical hardware is ever installed. So really, this is the core tension we're facing, boiled down. You've got this exponential demand for AI power running up against a physical supply from our power grids that can't keep up. You've got amazing technological innovation clashing with a messy, unpredictable world of regulations and politics. And it all comes down to this. The sleek, seamless digital future we all imagine is being built on a physical foundation that is strained, complicated, and honestly, pretty fragile.
And that brings us to the final crucial question. We are building a future that is fundamentally powered by AI, and our ambitions are growing bigger every single day. But at the end of it all, that digital magic, every bit of it, depends entirely on a very real, very physical world of power plants, cooling pipes, and supply chains. So the question we all have to ask ourselves is this: can our physical world actually keep pace with our digital dreams?